All right, well, thanks for joining us today. It's great to be together again. If you haven't been here before, my name is Lou. I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm so glad that you're with us, especially if you're new here. Today, we are continuing a teaching series called BC. BC, that stands for Before Christ. And so what we're looking at are stories that came before Christ. These would have been the stories that Jesus was told as a child growing up. They're stories he would have memorized, stories that he would have told with his friends, with his parents. These stories were a big deal. They're stories from what we call the Old Testament. Now, in case you don't know this, all right, little Bible 101 lesson here. The Bible is broken up into two parts. There's the Old Testament, which is actually most of it. And then there's the creatively named New Testament, which the New Testament is the part with Jesus in it by name. And the Old Testament is largely the history of Israel, mostly the history of Israel. So to oversimplify it, if anyone asks you, the Old Testament is basically God showing himself to the world in the form of a nation. That nation is Israel. That's why we talk so much about the Jewish people. The New Testament is God showing himself to the world in the form of a person, the person of Jesus. So we're looking at the Old Testament stories in this series. Today, the story that we're going to talk about today. To start off, I'll tell you a little story of my own. So when I was in college, actually before college, I had these dreams of playing basketball. If you've been here for a while, you know I'm kind of into basketball. Some of you may have heard that I spent a few years actually playing in the NBA. And yeah, all the services laughed just like that. Yeah, if you heard that, that was a lie. I did not play in the NBA. But in high school, I thought I was pretty good. And then I went to college. I went to a small Division III school because I wanted to play there. I had these dreams of playing there. And that's when I realized I really wasn't all that good. Everybody was a lot better than me, and everybody was a lot bigger than me. So I worked out with the team for a little while, and then there were tryouts, and it came to a point where they released the list. You know, they published it on the door of the coach's door, and I was at the bottom of the list, and I had made the team as a reserve. I wasn't on the official roster, but I was on the reserve team, and that was upsetting for me. It was, for real, it was a lot of disappointment. I had plans I was hoping to be able to play for the next 4 years. And so I ended up not playing. And I was in this season of disappointment and uncertainty, right? Like I didn't know what my future was going to look like, but I was hoping I would at least get to play sports for the next few years. But now I didn't know what it was going to look like. Have you ever been there? You ever been coming out of disappointment and headed into uncertainty, and maybe your situation was a lot more serious than a basketball team? Maybe it's like the loss of a job, a steady income. It's disappointing, and you're looking ahead like, well, what's next? What do I do now? Or maybe it's the loss of a person. Maybe someone you love passes away. You don't know what life's going to look like without them. Or maybe it's a breakup. Maybe you thought you were going to get into a school you didn't get into. But something goes wrong. Something goes in a way you don't want it to go. And you're looking ahead at the future just wondering, now what? What now and what next? In that moment, right, if you've ever been there, maybe you're there right now. What is it that you think you need ultimately? In that moment. Ever thought about that? Like, what actually do I need in those moments of uncertainty when dealing with disappointment? Or let's put it this way. If you had the opportunity to have a conversation face to face with God, like a back and forth conversation, what would you ask for during that season of uncertainty and disappointment? Or maybe you don't believe in God, you're like totally not on board with that. Well, just pretend. Like imagine there really is a God, and you really did have the opportunity to have a conversation with him, like a man speaks to a friend. What would you ask for? What would your request be in that moment, in that season? The story that we're looking at today is about a guy who was in that position. He's coming out of disappointment and headed into uncertainty. He doesn't know what his future is going to look like. And he, according to the story, he actually does have the opportunity to speak to God like a man speaks to a friend. And he's got the opportunity to make a request. And what he asks for is not anything like what I would have asked for. Like in those moments when I'm in disappointment and uncertainty, what I want answers, and I've got some suggested outcomes, you know? It's like, why did this happen? How is this gonna work out? But how about this, right? I want answers and outcome. For him, he asked for neither an answer nor an outcome. But what he gets from this question is something he ends up holding onto for the rest of his life, throughout seasons of uncertainty and disappointment. And not just him, but people for hundreds of years after him held on to this same answer he gets from God in their seasons of disappointment and uncertainty. It was exactly what he needed, and it ended up being the solution to what so many other people needed at so many other different times throughout history. In fact, there's a verse in the story that we're going to highlight. This verse is the most quoted verse in the Bible, by the Bible, throughout the entire Bible, because people call it to mind so many times in difficult positions. So the story we're looking at today is about a guy named Moses. Anybody ever heard of Moses before? All right, anybody watch that Charlton Heston movie on Easter Sunday, The Ten Commandments? All right, it's not the most thrilling. There's also The Prince of Egypt, if you're into the cartoons. I think Argyle Theater is actually getting ready to put on The Prince of Egypt. Moses has a long story. He's got an entire book of the Bible basically dedicated to his life. It's 40 chapters long. It's called the Book of Exodus. It's a fascinating story, lots of ups and downs. I don't have time to cover all of the story of Moses during the time we have here together, but to give you the short version of it, to bring you up to the part that we're going to talk about today, Moses was an ancient Jewish person, and he was not raised in a Jewish home. He was actually raised in the household of Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt. So he was living like a prince, even though he was a Jewish person. The Jewish people at that time were in slavery. They were the workforce of ancient Egypt. Like, they built the things and did all the hard work. Their population was growing and growing and growing, and the king of Egypt was intimidated by the size of the Jews, and so he put them into slavery to keep them under control. And through a crazy series of events, at a certain point in the story, God tells Moses to take the Jewish people out of slavery and lead them into a land flowing with milk and honey. They're going to be their own nation, and they're going to be thriving, and it's going to be great. They're going to be free. And Moses feels inadequate. Understandably, I would feel pretty inadequate, right? To take all of these people out. He's pretty intimidated by Pharaoh, who's got armies, but eventually he does it. And it's a pretty crazy story. Like I said, you can watch Prince of Egypt. But he gets them through. There's the whole scene with the Red Sea where the sea like parts, they walk through the sea. It's pretty miraculous. And then they get to the other side and they're free. And they reach the base of Mount Sinai, which is on the north shore of Long Island. No, it's not. It's on the other side of the world. They get to Mount Sinai and they're in kind of a now what position. Like, what is it? How do you do a country? You know, they're just this group of people trying to figure out what it looks like to build a civilization. Now they have all this freedom. They were in slavery for 400 years. They didn't know what it was like to be free. And so this is the part of the story where Moses gives them the 10 commandments. The first 2 commandments, the first one is don't worship other gods. And the second one is don't build idols. Don't make idols. And that like kind of gets them started off. And then Moses goes to the top of Mount Sinai, and we're told, according to the story, that he speaks to God like a man speaks to a friend. There's this like back and forth, and they're trying to figure out how to become a nation, what to do. Like, there's all of this discussion. And while he's up there, the people on the ground, thousands and thousands and thousands of them, they grow impatient. And they start worshiping another god, and they make a golden calf. to worship that represents this other God. In other words, it was the first part of the journey and they broke the first 2 commandments, like right off the bat. There's this rebellion forming at the base of the mountain. And what's even more upsetting about it is that it's led by Aaron, who is the brother of Moses. And so Moses comes down, he snaps, he's angry. He actually breaks the 10 commandments. Like the tablets that Moses has that you see in like the pictures, those are actually version 2 of the 10 commandments because he broke the first one, so he got so angry. And for him, this was like a heartbreaking moment. This was disappointment. His future is totally uncertain. He's just gone through some pretty crazy things, and he's realizing that this is gonna be a lot harder than he thinks. And so he goes back up to the mountain, and that's where he makes his request. In this season of disappointment, trying to figure out what the future is gonna look like, he has a conversation with God, which leads us to what he asks for. He says this, and it's not in the form of a question. He says, "Now, show me your glory." That's the big request. That's not what I would ask for, but that's what he asked for. Now, glory is a word we don't use too often outside of like church context, not like everyday language, but the idea of someone's glory, it's the essence of who they are, like who they are at the core of their identity. He's saying, in essence, he's saying, I want to know you. He knows that looking at his uncertain future, he's going to have to trust this God that just pulled off these pretty amazing things in Egypt, but he knows he's going to have to trust him. And the reality of trust is that we don't trust what we don't know. And so he's saying, I need a clearer picture. I need a better picture of who you are. Ultimately, what Moses is suggesting is that what he needs in the moment of uncertainty is a clearer picture of the character of God, which is not a conclusion, at least that I naturally come to when I'm in seasons of uncertainty. But this is what Moses is suggesting here, which is pretty radical. He's asking for a better picture. And so I think it's worth, before we go into the picture that Moses gets, I think it's worth recognizing, like if you've got a picture here, let's say it's a picture frame. It's not very elaborate, it's pretty minimal. But what do you picture when you picture God? Really? And I'm not talking about so much like physical appearance, but what are the emotions that rise to the surface? The honest ones. Like when God enters the conversation or your thought process, what are the feelings? Is it like, oh, I'm being watched? Right? Is it a feeling of judgment? Is it a feeling of distance, intimidation? For me, for a long time, it was a feeling of like, while I wouldn't express this, there's a feeling that God was cold. If I had to describe him, like cold, distant, apathetic maybe. You know, he did some cool things for people in the past, like he's doing some, I guess, cool stuff around the world, but me, like he knows me. I felt like he didn't like me. Yeah, he loves me because he's God, he's gotta love everybody, but he doesn't like me. You know, like what, for you, what are they? Someone who's hypercritical, someone who's expecting you to be perfect and you can just never quite satisfy them? What picture do you picture when you picture God? What Moses is asking for is a clearer picture. He's like, I gotta see more. I gotta know more. And what's amazing is that God, it's like he's excited to answer this request, to fulfill this request. He gives Moses a clearer picture. And so here's what happens. Moses says, show me your glory. And then it says, if you continue in Exodus 33, it says, the Lord said, I'll cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, which is interesting. And I will proclaim my name, like my identity, who I am, the Lord, in your presence. My goodness will pass before you. You're gonna experience my goodness like nobody else has. And then if you fast forward, we're told that the Lord came down in a cloud. This is in the next chapter. They planned to meet early in the morning. It says, God tells Moses, he's like, meet me up at the mountain early in the morning. When I read that first time, I'm like, what if he overslept? That was the first thought that came through my mind. Wouldn't it be bad, you know? Or if he can't sleep, does he pray and ask God to help him to fall asleep because he's got a meeting with God in the morning? I don't know. That's where my mind goes. Anyway, so he comes down in a cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed his name. Like there's this divine encounter there. There's a fog, there's a cloud, and he proclaims his name as he passes by the Lord. It says, He passed in front of Moses proclaiming, are you ready? Here's the description. This is the most quoted verse in the Bible, by the Bible, throughout the entire Bible. It's the thing people hold on to in their seasons of uncertainty and disappointment. It starts out by saying, the Lord, the Lord. Now, this is not actually a translation. Some of you know that this was written in Hebrew and Aramaic. This is not a translation of the words that are there. It's a substitution. In the original language, the word that's there is God's name. Now, we've substituted the word Lord because the ancient Jewish people would never say God's name. They had so much respect for it that they were afraid they were going to mispronounce it. And so whenever they came to God's name while they were reading, they would say Adonai, which means Lord. But they wouldn't say his name because they were afraid to pronounce it. And so we've kept up that tradition. Whenever you see in your Bible, whenever you see the word Lord in all caps, it's not actually the word Lord, it's God's name. His name is Yahweh. Yahweh. It literally means he is. It has this idea that he is unchanging and ever present. He always will be and is. He's alive, he's active. He was then, he will be, and he is right now today. It's his name, Yahweh. And so he starts off saying, this is my name, Yahweh, Yahweh. Moses is the first person who hears God's name. He actually says this in chapter 6 of Exodus. He says, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all those people that came before you, they did not know my name. You're seeing a side of me no one else has. And so he hears his name, which is deeply personal, deeply personal. And then there's the description, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness. That's the description. That becomes the trademark description of God throughout the entire Bible. You see, if you read other stories, you'll see these words come up over and over again. It comes up with guys like Nehemiah, who's a prophet, a guy named Jonah. Whenever there's an issue, you'll hear them praying, and they're like, you're gracious and compassionate and slow to anger. And they repeat this because they're reminding themselves of what God is like. It's the thing that they cling to. This is like, okay, you know Geico, right? 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on, right, you just know that, you know, right? Skittles, taste the, Nike is just, Wheaties is the breakfast of, okay. This becomes that for God. Now, it doesn't like bounce nicely like Geico does, you know, gracious and compassionate, but in the original language it actually does. There's a little bit more bounce to it, but this is the trademark description. In a world where every nation had different gods that they worshiped, and they were like, what's yours like? They were like, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. It became his description. Now, for me, I read these words and I'm like, okay, these are all nice, spiritual, positive words, but if I were to take these down, I can't list them off again. I just remember there were some good ones, you know, general, overall, positive. And so for me, these get lost in abstraction. But for the original readers, the language was so rich, there was a clear picture that was painted. And what I want to do in the time that we have left together is repaint that picture with experiences you've had understanding these words. Because according to this story, in seasons of uncertainty and disappointment, the thing we have to come back to is this picture. And it can't just be a vague picture of positivity. And so the first word is compassionate. Compassionate. In the original language, this is the word rakum. Not raccoon, rakum. It's a deeply emotional word. It communicates intense emotion, to be deeply moved. It comes from the word meaning womb. Womb. This is the word that's used to describe the way a mother feels for the child of her womb. In fact, in Isaiah 49:15, if you want to look that up, like God compares his love for people to the way a mother loves the child of her womb, her nursing child. And he says, even if a mother were to forget the child that she's nursing, he's like, I still won't forget you. It is a deeply moving kind of concern. It's something that we see in Jesus, surprisingly. Like later on in the story, Jesus compares himself to a mother hen. Like he says he would have gathered, like gathering chicks and protecting them under the shadow of his wing, like a mother hen would. He uses that same image, that same feeling of motherly love, compassion. For Moses, this would have been moving. We don't know much about Moses' dad. We don't hear much about him. But we do know that Moses, his life was saved on 2 separate occasions because of the rakum of a mother. At first, it's his own mother who does everything she can to spare his life. And then it's another mother who lives in Pharaoh's household who takes him in. Like, he's alive because of this. And this is the first word we're given about what God is like. He loves like a mother. Now, I think it might be helpful. Like, Jesus referred to God as his father more than anything else. And for some of us, that's a really helpful image. If your dad was someone you could count on, who was there, who was genuinely concerned for you, who provided for you and sacrificed for you, it's such a helpful word. But if you grew up in a house where like dad wasn't around, or it was unpleasant when he was, or painful when he was, then the word for father is not a helpful description of God. In fact, like people who study this stuff would say that we have a tendency, that human beings have a tendency to project their feelings for their father onto God. Like we tend to think God is like whatever our father was. And so if you grew up in a house where your father was extremely critical, it's likely your default mode is to think that God is extremely critical. But this, like maybe if the father thing doesn't work for you, knowing that God loves like a mother loves her nursing child, that could be a vivid picture for you. So my question, getting back to our activity, right? Let's say you got to put this word in a picture. I'm not going to fill this box, but just let's say you got to picture it. Have you ever been on the receiving end of motherly love, of deeply moved affection? Can you picture that? Like really try. Or maybe you've given that to someone. Maybe you're a mother and you felt that. Like for me, the picture that I picture is when I was in high school, I was making a world of horrible decisions. And there came a point where things just fell apart for me, where I felt like emotionally broken. And I was doing all these things my parents were telling me not to do. And like that day when things fell apart, my mom walked in my bedroom and I'm sitting there just feeling emotionally like just depleted. And she walks in and I'm expecting an I told you so conversation. I'm expecting like a punishment. And she just sits on the edge of my bed and puts her arm around me. And we both just like sat there in silence. And for me, that's a picture of this. And so my question is, can you form a picture of this and hold on to it? Hold on to it and save it for later, okay? Next word, gracious. Yahweh, the compassionate and gracious God. This is the word kanun. So the first 2 words actually rhyme. It's Yahweh, rakum, kanun. Gracious. When we think gracious, a lot of us think like forgiving, but the word is actually favor. To give you an idea of what this is, it's like if you could be God's favorite, but it meant nothing negative for anyone else, that would be his disposition toward you. It's an intense interest. It has the idea of something that's given just out of pure delight. Like you bring him joy, not because of how you are, though I'm sure you're great, but because of how he is. It's the idea of him being in your corner. This is something we see a lot with Jesus. He's just an advocate of people that don't get it right, people that keep messing up, people with bad habits. He's just like, I'm just for these people. Yeah, like they've got issues, but I want what's good for them. It's persistent. If you were with us a while ago, we talked about Esther a few weeks ago, the story of Esther and the king. This king was crazy about Esther, this woman. He made her the queen. This is the word that's used to describe the way the king felt toward Esther. He had this kind of favor for her. And this is the kind of favor God has for people. In a very practical way, like I said before, sometimes like I believe God loves me, but I don't believe God likes me. This idea is that he likes you. He likes you. Like he knows you and you bring him joy. And so what's the picture you have of this? Have you been there? Can you like think through your memories And think of a time when you felt this, like someone was just for you. They just wanted you to succeed. They just wanted good for you. Or maybe you gave this to someone else. Like there's someone in your life, you're just like, that guy, I just want to see him like thrive. I want to see her thrive. Have you been there? Can you formulate a picture to get yourself there emotionally? For me, the person I think of is my grandmother. She passed away years ago, but she had this ability to make me feel like I was the most important person in the world. She used to tell me all the time I was 10 feet tall, and I knew she was lying. But when I would talk, she would listen like what I was saying was amazing. I made coffee for her once as a child. I'll never forget. It was terrible. I watered it down. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to work the machine. She drank the whole thing. It was like, you got to make it every single day because it's just fantastic. Like she showed me this crazy amount of favor. For me, that's the picture of this word. And it's a picture I keep it to understand what God is like. The next word, slow to anger, okay? Now, if someone were writing like a short 3-sentence description of me, I like them to keep anger out of it, you know? Like, why do we have to bring it in at all? Who cares what my relationship is to anger? The word here, anger is actually not in the text. It's the phrase, it says that God is long of nose. Literally, it just says he has a long nose. Which seems irrelevant unless you know that in the Hebrew language, the phrase for anger, when someone gets angry, they say their nose burned hot. You ever see someone get angry and their nose turns red? Like that's the expression for anger. And so to say he's long of nose is to say he's slow to anger. It's a picture of someone who can like breathe. Now, like I mentioned before, I'm like, why do we have to include anger? I thought we were just gonna talk about the good stuff, right? But this is good. It is good. It's a picture of God's patience and his desire to protect you. It's a picture of patience and protection. It's not like Moses was. And so this also would have been perfect, like personal for Moses. He saw someone doing something that wasn't right and he killed him on the spot. He's the one who shattered the first version of the 10 Commandments. Like he was easily angered. And what he's being told is like, God is not like you. It is an expression of God's love and justice. Like you can't have someone who is good who doesn't also get angry. There is a time in an emotionally mature, healthy adult when the best response is anger. There's a time to get angry. And I would argue it's the kind of anger that we crave. It's the response to evil that we crave. Right? Like if you're a child and someone hurts you and you go to your parents and they like to tell them your pain and they just smile because they did, like that would be hurtful. We want to know that there is a God who is upset about the injustice in the world, who's bothered by the pain that you're experiencing, the hurt that is the reality of everyday life for so many people. And yet, He's calm and he's controlled. He's patient through it. He's not waiting for people to mess up so he can zap them. So what do you picture? Have you seen this? It's not anger that's like the cause of a bruised ego, which is what most of our anger is. You know, we're insulted, so we get angry. No, this is anger over injustice and pain. Anger over the brokenness of the world. Have you ever seen this? Like for me, the picture that I have is a guy on our management team. He's another pastor. His name's Greg Lee. He's older. He's been doing this a lot longer than I have. He's one of the nicest people in the world. Super genuine guy. But I've seen him get angry. I've seen him talk about the exploitation of vulnerable people. And I've literally seen his nose turn red. It gets hot. But it's anger on behalf of the good of other people. It's anger from a place of love and goodness. It's not a bruised ego. And this is the nature of God. He's upset. He is in pain over your pain and the brokenness of the world. Steadfast love, or the NIV says love. This is the word hesed. Now, in English, we don't have a word for this. There is no English word. And it's because this word is typically used in covenants, and we don't have many of those in our culture. But the word is a combination of the idea of love, as we know it, sacrificial generosity, and enduring commitment. It's the word that is most central to the character of God. In fact, it's repeated in this description in Exodus. It comes up twice. It is the word that best describes the way that God is. If you've ever read Psalm 136, it's a psalm, it'll say like, God did this, and then it says his love endures forever. And then he did this, his love endures forever. And then he did this, his love endures. It repeats it 26 times, his love endures forever. It's the word hesed. It's like he has this love, this enduring commitment that is unwilling to quit. There's a story in the book of Hosea. It's about a guy who marries a prostitute. And she continues to leave him. She is the picture of unfaithfulness. And yet he continues to pursue her over and over and over again. He waits for her to come back. He goes after her. That's the picture of this word. And we're told, like, if you've ever wondered if you've experienced this, probably you haven't. Like, even in the book of Hosea, it says that God's hesed is not like ours. Ours, he says, is like the morning mist. It comes and it goes. But his, it endures forever. And so the question is, what do you picture when you picture this? Do you have a picture of this? For me, I picture my aunt and uncle. They had a dog. Her name was Xena. She was a Doberman. She was huge black dog. She looked terrifying, but she was the nicest dog in the world. My aunt, when she was younger, she had a rough experience with a husky. And so she has just always been really uncomfortable, really fearful of huskies. And one day she was in her garage, and she's got the garage door open. She's got her back to the garage door. She turns around. She sees there's a husky. It's like her worst nightmare, husky just coming at her. And in an instant, her dog, Xena, comes flying into the garage and stands in between her and the husky. But the dog stood not face to face with the dog, because if they made eye contact, there would have been a fight. And so Xena just stood like parallel, wouldn't look at the dog, and she just pressed her body up against my aunt. Like, you're not going anywhere, I'm here. Is the picture of sacrificial love. Like, I'm there when you need me. It's love in pursuit. Love even though it costs me. For me, this is a picture that I picture. The last one is faithfulness. It's the word emet. It's where we get the word amen, which literally means that's true. In case you didn't know that, when you say amen, you're saying that's true. But it's not just the idea of not being false. It's true in the sense that it's stable, it's reliable, it's trustworthy. Literally, it is for someone to be emet, they are worthy of your trust. To have faith, we say we have faith in God or I have faith in that person. To have faith in someone is to consider that person emet. The idea is you can count on him. He's like old faithful. He will come through. He's unchanging. He's not flaky. He's reliable. He's stable. For me, the picture I have of this is actually my wife, Allie. And not at home, but at work. We work together. Working with her, she's the picture of faithfulness. When she's given a responsibility, she just sees it through. Like, she works hard, she gets the job done, she's stable, she's consistent, she can be counted on over and over and over again. It's just this picture of steady and reliable. And so we're out of time. But here's the idea, right? Just to bring it together. This picture that you picture, when you picture God, you are constantly going to drift in the direction of an inaccurate picture of God. We have to be intentional about bringing ourselves back to God's goodness. And so, together, the idea is that these pictures, if you have a picture for each one of them, those together make up the picture of God. Or at least can get you close in the direction of the picture of God. And there are times in my life when I have to return to each one of these pictures. And in a very, very practical way, I do. It's these images that help ground me in who God is, right? So to give you a super practical example, all right, just to be vulnerable with you. Like I said, there are times where I feel like God's not interested in me. Because I know what I just did. I know I just made that mistake again. I said that thing again, and I'm like, you must be so tired with me. And so if I'm sitting down to pray, or I'm having my own quiet time with God, often there's a feeling like I'm just a bother. Like he's probably not all that interested in what I'm bringing to him. And it's in moments like that where I stop and I did this on Thursday morning. I think about my grandmother. And how, like, when I spoke to her, she would get so dang close to my face. Like, she'd just keep scooting, and then she would squeeze my hands and just listen to everything that was coming out of my mouth, like I was giving her the most amazing news in the world. She hung on every word. She showed me favor. And the idea is, this is God's posture toward us. But we have to be intentional about bringing ourselves back to that place. There are going to be times where you feel like God is apathetic. You're going through pain and you're like, God doesn't care. Obviously, look at what's going on in my life. It's moments like that. Whatever picture you came up with when we talked about the word compassionate, the love of a mother, you got to go back there. And remember, okay, like I had this experience and it wasn't a perfect expression of what God is like, but I remember being on the receiving end of that. And it's important for me to know that God wants me to know that I could be on the receiving end of his compassion. There are going to be times when you're like, is he actually good? Can he really be trusted? And for me, I picture like the dog that would stand in the middle for me. Steadfast love. Like I picture Hosea. The guy's just waiting, like pursuing the woman that's running off. These pictures are what can help us in a very practical way when we need it most, in seasons of uncertainty. And coming out of disappointment, when we need to know that there is a God who is good and who cares, we've got to come back to this. And so, what if you began to pray? Simple prayer that Moses prayed. Show me your glory. For me, like I started praying that prayer in 2010. It's like, I just want to know what you're like. And it's a prayer I've continued to pray. It's a prayer I prayed this morning. Like I want to be reminded again of your goodness. It's a prayer that he wants to answer. It's a prayer that he does answer. And I believe, like no matter what you're going through, this is the thing that will get you through it. An accurate picture of the goodness of God. I'm going to ask the band to come back up here. We're going to sing one more song together. But the last picture I want to leave you with, we actually talked about this. I told this story in 2022 during a series called Throwbacks. We just read the same passages, told the same thing, taught the same lesson. And that Sunday, there was someone who showed up for the first time who did not want to be in church, had never been in church, was not interested in anything spiritual or religious, but came just for the sake of coming. She was coming with her boyfriend. And the end of, I finished up, I said the same thing. I was like, what if we just started to pray the way that Moses did and ask God to show us his glory? And she went home and decided to pray that prayer. And that was it. And she was like, it felt awkward. She was like, all right, show me your glory. You've never done it before. She's like, it was uncomfortable, but she was serious about it. And there was no cloud that passed by. She was not on top of a mountain. Nothing happened in that moment. But something began. For her, things began to change. And if you ask her, what she'll tell you is that she began to see how good God was. Things slowly in her life began to change direction. Eventually, she became a regular. She joined a group. She got baptized. Her life it's going in a totally different direction. And she showed up in her darkest moment. And the reason I'm telling you that is not just because now she has this picture of God that she holds on to. I'm telling you that because God still answers that prayer. The prayer that Moses prayed hundreds and thousands of years ago. And the prayer that she prayed 3 years ago. It's one that God answers. It's one I think all of us can benefit from praying, no matter where you are in your faith journey.
Hey, this is Lou. Thanks for listening. I hope that this was helpful for you in some way.
So a lot of people don't know this, but Community Church is completely supported by the generous donations of people like you and me. And if you'd like to join that community of financial supporters, you can go to communitychurch.net/give, or you can give anytime on our church app. And so thanks for being part of this community, whether it's locally or from a distance. Thanks for investing in your faith. And thanks for being part of something that's bigger than yourself. Hope to see you soon.